Hi, my friends. Just a little reflection for you today. Spirituality, in its authentic expression, always finds itself in a cultural, exterior world context. At the same time, the goal of authentic spirituality and the practices within any authentic spiritual tradition or path is to find interior peace, joy, contentment, fulfillment, happiness, etc., regardless of what's happening on the exterior. Every era or age or cycle, or in the Vedas, some of you may be familiar, yuga in humanity, has a particular vibration or tone or frequency. We're currently living in what's called the Kali Yuga, otherwise known as the Dark Ages, or the cycle or era of destruction before rebirth, or chaos before a higher order is born out of evolution. We're in a tight squeeze of darkness and density right now. During what's known as the Satya Yuga, or the Golden Age, or when things are going a little better collectively, spirituality, the goal and the call of spiritual practice, will be different. There's still always the invitation to connect with Source, to connect with divinity, to be transformed in an alchemical process interiorly to become something greater. But perhaps in the Satya Yuga, in the Golden Age, there's not much motivation to do that. We have motivation to do that now, and it's called suffering. It's called conflict. It's called separation. It's called wounding. It's called pain. These are great motivators to do interior work rather than relying on the exteriors, because we all know by now the exterior seems to only be getting more intense. And actually, we don't have any control over that. It's kind of mechanical. It's part and parcel of the yugas, and in particular the Kali Yuga. Things are getting worse because they have to. But at the same time, that juxtaposition is always a call to look more deeply interiorly. And that phrase kind of gets thrown around in a cliche sort of way. Look inside, go inside, do your inner work. What does that really mean? I actually don't have time right now in this short video that I'm allotting to go into what that really means or how to do it. But that is the path that I lay out in the work that I teach, that I call the Kalyana Container, or the Unnamed Kalyana Way. And part of this video, as in all of my videos, is to invite you, if you're interested, on that journey, and to invite you to work with me if you'd like to. But regardless, the point I'm wanting to point to here is that we should not be looking for peace, joy, contentment, etc., happiness, in the exterior world where it can never be found anyway, but that's becoming more and more obvious now as things are getting denser and darker. The call is always to find interior presence, communion with God, peace, joy, alleviation of suffering. Regardless of what's happening on the exterior. And these qualities that I'm pointing to interiorly are unshakable once they've blossomed and grown and become rooted in your being on a moment-to-moment, day-to-day basis as a part of your very identity and self-expression. You cannot be shaken from them regardless of what's happening on the exterior. The first step is to stop looking for those answers on the exterior, especially now. We should know by now that that's not going to change until, of course, the cycles go through again and we find ourselves in the golden age, which I do believe is coming. But I do believe it's coming only if you're truly doing the work. The scriptures tell us about a split. That's interesting. A split of the earth, of planet Earth itself, into a higher density, fourth or fifth dimensional planet, and then continuing with the destruction, the negative destruction, not the positive destruction before rebirth, but the negative destruction of the third dimension that some might call hell on earth. And in fact, those of us who are deeply doing the interior work can already begin to live in a microcosm of the new earth, or heaven on earth, or a new reborn Garden of Eden, you might say. And I can attest to that, because when you find that interior space of unshakableness, the exterior does in fact change. However, those of you that are still doing the interior work in order to make the exterior better, that's the wrong reason, and that will come back to bite you. Never do anything in order for the exterior world to quote unquote get better. Because once the interior is better and healed, the exterior simply changes. But at the same time, while there are many layers interacting with each other, the kind of physical, political, cultural, religious world, even if that's not the one that I kind of resonate with, it is still there. And I do still see it, and I do still experience it, even if from a different way, because of my perspective interior. But in the Kali Yuga, during these times, even when you find that unshakable space inside of pure presence, pure communion with God, pure alchemical transformation into rebirth of a new being, it interacts with the exterior edginess and darkness. And in the Kali Yuga, I'm speaking from experience, this peace, this light, this joy does actually have a bit of an edge to it. It's not the same light, even though paradoxically it is. It's not the same expression or experience or manifestation of it that it would be and will be in the Satya Yuga, or the Golden Age, when interior and exterior are relating to each other a bit differently. For now, it's gritty, y'all. It's raw, y'all. and vulnerably exposing yourself on the operation table or the cutting board of life, if you will, during these times, without pretending or trying to live in la la land. A lot of us may have memories from past lives where we sat contemplatively aloof in the clouds or in the mountains or in a monastery where there wasn't a lot of chaos and friction in our immediate world. But shit's hitting the fan, y'all. It's really happening. The whole kind of end times that we've all been hearing about, I do believe we're living in. But it's not exactly the kind of magic, mythic, fairy tale version of that we probably grew up thinking about. Things are coming to an end. But if you're just sitting idly by, waiting, I'm sorry, but in my opinion, my perspective, you won't be on the track to ascension. And God can be found everywhere. It's not wrong, you're not bad. Again, it's just kind of mechanical. If you've not reached the tipping point, again, interesting, this kind of geometry I have. The tipping point, if you've not tipped over here yet in your inner work. And of course, there is grace. God provides grace, and it's not just by your efforts that you quote unquote save yourself, but it's a cooperation, it's a collaboration. So it's not through counting up good deeds or the karma scales or anything like that, because that in of itself is coming from an egoic place. It's about dismantling the ego. But in any case, the work, the spiritual practices and spirituality in general right now is calling us all to kind of a edgy, gritty, raw expression. To really face it, to really turn inside, to really turn yourself inside out, you might even say, to really stop the freight train, as my wife Christy likes to say, and get it going in the right direction, and to really stop relying on the exterior world for your happiness, for your peace. When we reach the golden age, we'll see what spirituality is there. Constant communion with God and conscious awareness of that, perhaps. And then as things start to slip down again, there comes more motivation because maybe we sat on our laurels and we're resting again aloof in the clouds in blissful oneness. There is still bliss to be had now in the Kali Yuga, trust me. But it's kind of a darkened bliss. It's kind of a darkened peace, a darkened light. Because that's just part of the cycles. And that's what the divine source or the spirit of evolution or whatever's driving this holographic simulation is wanting to experience. And so our spirituality, our spiritual connection, our spiritual practices will change. Still, unshakable peace, unshakable joy, unshakable presence is to be had. Alleviation of suffering is to be had. Dismantling of the ego is to be had. It's still the goal, to find it inside rather than outside. However, the feeling, the expression, the interaction with the exterior world, because it does always still interact, will be different. And right now, we should stop looking for the kind of fluffy spirituality. It's rough right now, but it's still highly worth it. The rewards are immense. The peace is still unshakable. and the joy and fulfillment is still undeniable. But it has an edge to it. It has a grit to it. It's calling us to fierceness, to fiercely face ourselves, not fiercely fight in the political arena. That could be a natural expression of it, not fiercely fight in the religious arena. That again might be a natural expression of it, but to fiercely face your own shadow, to fiercely uproot your own pathological programming and patterns, to fiercely go within and to fiercely relinquish your attachment on the exterior world and stop relying on that, because it will never, ever, ever give you what you're looking for and what you already have and can have interiorly. The kingdom of heaven is within you. And if you think that it's not, or if you buy into the suffering of the exterior world by trying to ignore it or turn away from it, because that in and of itself made it real, then that will perpetuate it. That's how this hologram works. But get used to the edginess, get used to the roughness, get used to the friction. That's the kind of spirituality that's happening right now. And that doesn't mean to harden yourself. No, the opposite. That doesn't mean to bristle yourself. No, that doesn't mean to protect yourself out of fear. No, it means the opposite. But there is a darkness, an eclipse, so to speak, even while you can find the brightness of God, the brightness of spirit, the brightness of love, the brightness of Christ consciousness returning in the midst of it. The expression of it just has a little bit of edge, a little bit of darkness right now. And at the same time, paradoxically, when you go in, find that space within yourself. And again, I can help you with this. Reach out if you'd like to work with me. It is immensely bright, immensely vast. And the dark night of the soul, in fact, comes as your interior eyes are adjusting to that new light. It seems dark for a minute, because you're not used to or accustomed to the brightness of God filtered through in this kind of way, because if it blasted you all at once, you'd be annihilated. So there's grace in the filtering as well. I love you guys. Thanks for watching. Namaste.